Welcome to Static and Embers. Tonight, we're lighting the first fire of the season, and we're diving into three of the most terrifying legends ever whispered around a fire. First, we enter the Hoia Baciu forest, a place so strange, locals call it the Bermuda Triangle of Romania. We have a tale from the American South, the horrifying legend of the Bell Witch, one of the only hauntings in history that may have led to death, and left behind written records that still chill researchers to this day. We'll walk the dark halls of Waverly Hills Sanatorium, home to real deaths, lingering spirits, and one room so infamous nurses refused to step inside. And something else, something that wasn't meant to be broadcast. So grab a drink, grab your blanket, stay close to the fire, and if you hear something just beyond the edge of the light, don't go looking for it. Just listen. They call it the Bermuda Triangle of Romania. People vanish there. Sometimes they come back in the same clothes, no aging, no memory. In the heart of Transylvania lies a forest so feared locals refuse to enter, even in daylight. It's called Hoia Baciu, and some say it's the most haunted forest in the world. There are stories, real accounts of people disappearing into the forest only to reappear years later unchanged, unaware anything even happened. One was a 6-year-old girl, vanished without a trace. Search parties found nothing. Then, 5 years later, she showed up. Same clothes, no dirt, no aging. She thought no time had passed. Another account tells of a woman who returned after 5 years, still holding the exact 15th century coin she had when she vanished. Skeptics call them urban legends, but if a place had a reputation for making people vanish, are you going to take that chance? I know I'm not, because when you hear what happens to people inside the forest, you'll start to wonder. At the center of Hoia Baciu is a perfect circle where nothing grows. No plants, no moss, nothing. The soil is normal. The tests say there's no reason anything shouldn't grow, but it just doesn't. And the trees, they grow twisted. Some spiral clockwise like candy canes, others zigzag like lightning bolts. Scientists from around the world have studied it. No one has an answer. Locals won't go near the circle, but others are drawn to it. Psychics, witches, people performing rituals, trying to open portals to another world. Some say it's a gateway to another dimension. What's clear is people don't leave the forest the same. Those who do make it out report migraines, dizziness, scratches, bruises, things they can't explain. Devices fail. Photos reveal faces no one saw in person. People describe glowing green eyes in the trees or voices whispering in the dark. Some hear giggling deep in the woods. Others see distant lights that move when you chase them, leading you toward the circle. Whether you believe the legends or not, the Hoia Baciu forest has been the site of too many strange occurrences to ignore. Maybe it's just a patch of strange trees, or maybe it's a place we were never meant to find. Either way, if you ever find yourself standing at the edge of that dead circle where the forest falls silent, ask yourself, would you step in? He was sitting alone in the middle of the forest. Then, in a single frame, he was lifted and thrown backwards. Under his clothes, fresh bleeding scratches, and the cameras caught everything. The Destination Truth crew traveled to Hoia Baciu, and the moment they arrived, strange things started happening. In the forest, things escalated fast. They saw unexplained lights moving through the trees, but when they checked thermal cameras, there was no heat source, nothing visible. They set up camp near the infamous circle, and each person took a turn sitting alone inside it. Josh Gates, the host, went first, and immediately heard voices whispering behind him. The crew radioed him asking, "What's behind you?" A light was moving behind him on camera, but when he turned around, nothing. The thermal imaging still powered on, but dead, just like others had reported. Then it was Evan's turn. Evan was the crew's cameraman. He sat cross-legged in the middle of the circle. He began hearing female voices from every direction, and then suddenly he was thrown backwards. No warning. 1 second he's sitting, the next he's several feet back, flat on the ground. They rushed to help him. He says he felt a strong, invisible force, like something rushed at him and thrust him. The medic checks him, pulls up his sleeves, and finds bleeding scratches across his arms, deep and fresh. But Evan was wearing long sleeves with thumb holes. There were no rips, no tears, no way for anything to get through. And the medic who treated him suddenly becomes nauseous and dizzy right there in the circle. As soon as he steps out of it, he's totally fine again. It gets worse. When they reviewed the EVP session from that night, they listened back to the moment Evan was in the clearing. He asked, "Is anyone here with me?" The response, a childlike giggle, clear as day. People visit haunted places all the time, looking for a thrill, hoping to catch a glimpse of something they don't understand. But what happened that night in the Hoia Baciu forest wasn't a sound or a shadow or a whisper on tape. Something made contact, and it left marks, physical ones. Even worse, it shows someone who didn't want to believe, someone just holding the camera. And maybe that's the scariest part. You don't have to believe in the forest for the forest to get to you, because that wasn't the last time it reached out. A hiker went into the Hoia Baciu forest alone. He says he never saw anything, not until he checked his photos later and realized something was standing right behind him. Regular people, hikers, tourists, even locals who ignore the warnings, have come out with stories they can't explain. One man, a photographer visiting from Germany, decided to explore the forest during the day. Just him and his camera. He spent hours walking the trails. There were no animals, no wind, no sound. He said it felt like being inside a vacuum, like the forest had swallowed up every noise. He didn't feel anything strange at the time, but when he got back to his hotel and started going through his camera roll, one photo stopped him cold. He had taken a selfie at the edge of the clearing, the infamous circle where nothing grows, and right behind him, a face, gray, sunken eyes, hollow, watching. He posted the image online, thinking maybe someone could debunk it, but no one could. Some say it was pareidolia, a trick of the shadows. Others pointed out it was centered in the frame, almost like it had leaned in right as the shutter clicked. And he wasn't the only one. A couple from the UK went on a night tour through Hoia Baciu with a local guide. They said at one point they all stopped walking because everyone suddenly smelled burnt hair. Seconds later, a woman doubled over with a stabbing pain in her stomach. She lifted her shirt and had fresh scratches running up her side, 3 of them, red and raised. They turned back immediately. And another man, a Romanian local who decided to camp overnight, said he woke up around 2 a.m. to the sound of giggling. At first, he thought it was a fox or an animal, until the laughter turned into a woman's voice, whispering in his ear in a language he couldn't understand. When he opened his tent, there was nothing there, but the ground around his campsite was marked with hoof prints circling his tent. And that silence, it came back. He described it like being underwater, muffled, heavy, like the forest was holding its breath. He only stayed one night, and he says he still has dreams about that voice. The most terrifying thing about Hoia Baciu isn't what you hear or even what you see. It's what follows you home. You hear stories like this and you wonder, would you even know if something followed you home? A scratch you can't explain, a whisper when you're alone, a figure in the background of your own photos. There's one haunting in American history that isn't just folklore. It's documented, witnessed by dozens of people, including a future president, and it may have killed man. It happened in the early 1800s in the hills of Tennessee near Adams. The Bell family lived on a modest farm, working the land and keeping to themselves until the knocking started. At first, it was just tapping on the walls, but then came the scratching inside the cabin, chains dragging across the floors at night, and worst of all, the voice. The entity introduced itself as Kate, and she hated John Bell. Nobody knows exactly why. Some say it started after a land dispute with a neighbor who practiced folk magic. But once the Bell Witch had chosen them, there was no escape. This wasn't just a case of bumps in the night. People from all over came to witness the Bell Witch, and they saw things. The witch would speak aloud, clear as day, mocking visitors, quoting Bible verses, even revealing secrets no one else could have known. At one point, future President Andrew Jackson traveled to the Bell Farm to see for himself. He and his men set up camp nearby. That night, their wagons refused to move. The horses panicked, and Jackson reportedly said, "I'd rather fight the entire British army than face the Bell Witch again." But the worst part came years into the torment. John Bell started getting sick. His tongue would swell. His throat would close up like invisible hands were choking him. And on December 20th, 1820, John Bell died. The family claimed they found a strange black vial in the cupboard, poison that the witch said she had given him. At the funeral, the witch's voice rang out laughing. And here's where it gets even more unsettling. This isn't just a campfire legend. There are written records from that time, diaries, newspaper accounts, even a book published in 1894 called An Authenticated History of the Bell Witch. It includes eyewitness testimony from people who were there, people who claimed the witch told them she'd return in 107 years. Some say she did, and others say she never really left. So if you're ever in Adams, Tennessee, and you feel a cold wind in the hollow or hear a woman's voice whispering your name when no one's there, you might have just met the Bell Witch. If your radio ever turns on by itself, even if the batteries are dead, run. Don't listen. And whatever you do, don't answer. Because if you can hear it, it's already picked you. Most people don't know about the Whisper Pines signal. It's not online, it's not in any database. But the local search and rescue teams in parts of the Appalachian backwoods, they've heard it. It's happened to campers, hikers, even park rangers. Somewhere deep in the forest, usually at night, radios suddenly flicker on, even if they're turned off, even if they don't have batteries. A crackling voice cuts through the static. If you're hearing this, it's already chosen you. Nobody knows where the broadcast comes from. It's not on any real frequency. And the creepiest part, it doesn't matter what kind of device you have, walkie-talkie, emergency beacon, cell phone in airplane mode, the signal still gets through. One of the worst cases happened in September of 2022 when a hiker named Ethan Caldwell went missing near Whisper Pines. Ethan wasn't the kind of guy to get lost. He was camping with 3 friends when the first radio went off. A little emergency scanner clipped to his pack. It was turned off, and it was out of batteries, but it clicked on anyway. At first they thought it was a weather alert, but the voice wasn't a weather report. If you're hearing this, it's already chosen you. Then Ethan's phone vibrated. It was in airplane mode. Same message, same voice. One of his friends grabbed a walkie-talkie from his gear bag. No batteries, but when he held it to his ear, the speaker crackled. If you're hearing this, it's already chosen you. They tried to laugh it off, but at 3:15 a.m., Ethan unzipped his tent and walked straight into the woods, barefoot. His friends tried to stop him, but he kept moving like he was in a trance, eyes open, no response. And the deeper they followed, the more radios they heard. Old emergency radios, crackling speakers left behind by other campers, some dangling from tree branches tied like ornaments, all whispering the same thing. It's already chosen you. Ethan vanished into the trees. They never found him. Search teams followed his footprints for 6 miles. Then the trail just stopped, like he'd disappeared mid-step. At his last known location, they found an old shortwave radio from the 1970s, plugged into nothing, still whispering. The FCC says there's no station broadcasting on that frequency. There never was. Some people think it's not a signal at all. They say it's something older than we are, something that hunts with sound. So if you're ever camping in the mountains and you hear that broadcast, don't speak, don't answer, because whatever's transmitting isn't just sending a message, it's listening. Even when Waverly Hills was open, the nurses avoided room 502. Now, they say she never left. Some people visit Waverly Hills just for the thrill, but the stories about room 502, they stay with you. There's something about room 502 that makes even the living nurses uneasy, even back when Waverly was operational. They claimed it carried a darkness, a heaviness in the chest. Some said it was where Hope went to die. Here's what's known. In the 1920s, a young head nurse named Mary was found hanging from a light fixture inside the room. The official story was suicide, shame over an unwed pregnancy by a doctor at the sanatorium. Another nurse also died by suicide in the same room in 1932, jumping from the window. But there are rumors she didn't jump, that something had pushed her. After that day, nurses refused to use the room and it was turned into a storage closet. Fast forward to the 1990s, a team of investigators spent the night on the 5th floor. One of them, a woman named Tasha, had worked as a hospice nurse for years, said 502 felt wrong, like stepping into a memory you didn't belong in. She sat in the middle of the room alone, recorder in hand. 10 minutes passed. Nothing. Then she heard the soft click of heels on tile behind her. She turned, no one there. She called out, thinking it was one of her team. Silence. Then the door slammed shut. Tasha screamed and tried to force it open. When her team finally reached her, she was curled in the corner, whispering over and over, "She was behind me. I felt her breath." They checked the footage, and the door had closed by itself, and the audio caught a faint voice, female, close to the mic, saying, "Don't make me go back in." Even stranger, Tasha had deep red scratches on her shoulder, under her clothes. More recently, a nurse visiting on a ghost tour fainted the moment she stepped inside 502. She later told staff she had a dream days before of being dragged down a hallway by someone in a white uniform, the same hallway 502 opens into. Some say the woman who died there still thinks she's on duty. Others think she's trapped in the final moments of her life. But one thing is consistent in every report. You don't walk out of 502 the same as you went in. Most people don't realize Waverly Hills has tunnels underneath it, but they're real. And if you walk far enough into the old body chute, you might find out you're not alone down there. In the early 2000s, a group of amateur ghost hunters got permission to explore Waverly overnight. They were especially interested in the body chute, the long tunnel used to transport dead patients discreetly during the tuberculosis epidemic. Locals sometimes call it the death tunnel, but here's the thing. There's another tunnel no one talks about. This one's a maintenance drain. It's smaller and runs parallel to the death tunnel, and it's barely wide enough to crawl through. The staff at Waverly don't like going near it because sometimes they hear something moving in there. The ghost hunters, of course, wanted to try it, so one of them, a guy named Kyle, volunteered to crawl partway in while his friends stayed near the entrance. He had a GoPro strapped to his chest, but the footage never made it online. About 50 feet in, Kyle said the air changed. It got thick, like breathing through wet cloth. And then he heard something behind him, near the entrance. At first, he thought it was his friends, but their voices were long gone. Instead, he heard dragging, something pulling itself slowly along the concrete behind him. When he pointed his light back toward the entrance, no one was there, but the dragging sound didn't stop. It moved closer. Kyle panicked and tried to crawl backwards, but he said his legs wouldn't work right, like the tunnel was pressing down on him. The last thing he remembers before blacking out was seeing something just beyond the flashlight's reach. Not a ghost, not a person, just a shape, low to the ground, pale and wet, with something sharp scraping the tunnel wall. When the team found him, he was unconscious near the mouth of the drain tunnel, covered in shallow scratches. He wouldn't talk about what he saw for weeks. When he finally did, he said it wasn't a spirit, it was something else, something alive, or at least pretending to be. Whatever Kyle saw that night, it didn't follow him out of the tunnel. It never does. It just waits down there for the next person who thinks crawling into the dark is a good idea. They don't let tourists into the old morgue at Waverly anymore, and if you knew what happened there after dark, you wouldn't ask to go. In the late 90s, before Waverly Hills was officially a tourist attraction, a group of local teens broke into the building on a dare. They thought the scariest part would be the 5th floor, but the morgue is where they ran out screaming. One of the boys, Jason, told the story years later, but only after the others had refused to talk about it. They found the morgue by accident through a collapsed hallway. Most of the drawers were rusted shut, except one. Jason said it slid out perfectly smooth, like someone had oiled it yesterday. Inside was nothing. But here's where it gets strange. As soon as the drawer was fully extended, the room got cold. Not just basement cold, breath crystallizing cold. And then they heard something, a sound from inside the drawer. At first, it was a faint knocking, then scratching, then soft breathing. They shined their flashlights directly into the drawer, and what they saw wasn't a ghost or a corpse. It was the back of the drawer, but there was no back. That part of Waverly's morgue had collapsed years before. Some of the drawers opened into nothing now, just an echoing void beneath the building. And in that void, Jason swears he saw eyes, wide, wet, and staring straight back at him. If you saw eyes staring back at you from the dark, would you run or slam it shut? They slammed the drawer shut and ran, and slamming it shut seemed to have definitely been the right choice, because halfway up the stairs, they heard it, something scrambling, not from the morgue itself, from inside the drawer, like claws on metal, something fast. Then came the pounding, hard enough to make the walls shake, and just before they got out, they heard a voice from the echoing void behind the drawers. Not a ghost, not a whisper. It was calling after them. One word. Stay. Got a story of your own, or a place you are too scared to visit? Drop it in the comments. We might just add it to the fire. There's more waiting. New stories every night, and every Sunday we gather like this again. Click here to keep going and subscribe before the fire goes out. The next campfire starts soon, and you are already on the list. We're not done.